We're going to start off with presentations from Bothell, Seattle, and Tacoma, and then we will go into your questions. For those of you who are participating, we have a couple of questions that were submitted previously, but feel free at any time to also send a question in the chat as well. So without further ado, go ahead, Alexa.
So like Toren said, I'm Alexa. I am the UW Bothell Sustainability Coordinator, and I'm in charge of all of sustainability at UW Bothell. I also work very closely with the Cascadia College Sustainability Assistant Director, and we kind of don't see any lines between Cascadia and UW Bothell, considering that we share the same campus and often the same buildings. I am housed within facility services and campus operations, and I'll show you a picture of where that is and what that means in a minute. But yeah, I'm a one-person team unless I have students, and I work very closely with Tacoma and Seattle as well, so that we kind of join forces and move forward sustainability as a university. Okay, so the physical plant is where my building is located, and that is kind of the central hub of campus. That's where maintenance, custodial, move setup, my office, and a couple of other offices is housed. Also, it's where the main building heating and cooling systems are. So we have main control over those items, and it's underneath the gray building that you see here, and we are able to be very efficient with the way that we heat and cool our buildings, and then we work to be more efficient wherever possible. And we focus on different systems, including waste. So we have triple stations on our campus. We work on educating people around not only compost, but how to recycle properly. And then we have different types of recycling and compost on campus, whether it be e-media recycling or composting with our grounds team for the scraps that they have, or vermicomposting or commercial composting. So we really focus on trying to provide as many options as possible and be as sustainable as possible. We have a lot of water on our campus as well, being that we have a 58-acre wetland with a salmon spawning creek or salmon bearing creek. We are really focused on making sure that the water that eventually will drain to the wetland is safe when it hits that. So there's a lot of studies that go on our campus around the wetland and around the water quality and the campus crows that we have. And I'll talk about that in a minute as well. I'm in charge of stormwater management as well as our salmon safe certification. So ensuring that we are in compliance with all of our regulations through Department of Ecology. And then we try to just save as much water as possible through the way we're irrigating our campus, low flow showers and toilets. And we use our wetland as a living laboratory, like I said, to study the water quality. And we have a bunch of other mechanisms to try to save as much water as possible as well. And the photo down below on the left, bottom left, that is a top-down view of our 58-acre wetland. And then there's Lake Truly, which is a man-made lake that we have on campus as well. Energy is something else that we really pride ourselves on. We have solar panels on our library, one of our Cascadia buildings, and all of our garages. And we really work to save as much money or as much energy as possible through the building automation system that we have, so we can control everything with a push of a button, which is great. And then we also get notifications when things are going wrong, which is something that is different than the Tacoma and Seattle campuses, because we have a little bit newer buildings, and so we're able to have that control a little more. And then we also have occupancy sensors, so things automatically shut off so that we're saving that power and not having to rely on other people to have the action of turning things off. Transportation. So a little bit different than Seattle campus as well. I'm not sure as much about Tacoma campus, but transportation is really hard for us because we are a commuter campus. And so we try to to do things like promoting biking through being situated along the North Creek Trail. We also have bike maintenance stations, bike racks, bike lockers, just trying to incentivize biking and alternative transportation. We work really closely with King County Metro and Community Transit and other transit agencies to try to get as many lines through campus as possible. And then, of course, electric vehicle charging stations wherever we possibly can to incentivize electric vehicles. We really love our campus food system as well. We have a campus farm, which is about a ½ acre. We've got, I think, 10 beds now, which is super exciting. And we try to get people to just learn how to grow their own food and get their hands dirty. And we also donate that food to Husky Pantry and Kodiak Cave to help people that might have food issues and food insecurity, and educating around that as well. We also have an herb block and a food forest where people can learn about things that they might not run into all of the time. Our grounds team is awesome. We love our grounds team. They put in a lot of effort to try to make our campus beautiful, to be pesticide and chemical fertilizer free, which we've done for 12 years and counting. We do things a little bit different. We don't manage things in the same way that typical management or beautifying of things is done in a typical ground setting. So we do leave things intentionally dormant sometimes to support the habitats under the tall brush, and also to try to reduce our consumption of water during the summer season when things are a little bit hot. We plant native species as much as possible. And then I also run a bee studying group called the CCUW Research Initiative, where we work with the grounds team in partnership to say, hey, we've got bloom gaps here, so the bees and the pollinators are not able to get the forage that they need to survive. So maybe we fill that next year. And so we have a really close relationship in that way as well. Lastly, I just wanted to touch again on our 58-acre wetland. So just over the buildings in the top right corner, that is our wetland. It expands all the way from the beginning of campus all the way to the end of campus, north to south. It's used as a living laboratory. Like I said, we study birds, we study water, salmon, other biodiversity, which is awesome. It's kind of the crowning jewel of our campus. We also have campus crows, about 15,000, and we study not only the communication between crows on campus, but also their migration patterns and any, potential impacts from their poop and the way that affects the wetland as well. And I will link in the chat a virtual tour of the wetland if you all are interested in that. It was one of the Earth Week events, and we have it as a resource so you can not have to come to campus to experience our wetland. So that's all from me. Hope you enjoyed.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexa. That was a great presentation. So now we'll move on to Daimon.
I am with UW Sustainability here on the Seattle campus. Our website is green.uw.edu, along with Toren, who's works with me at the UW Sustainability office. So our office is kind of a central resource hub for sustainability across the Seattle campus, as well as a number of our programs are tri-campus in nature. So we coordinate with Alexa and Allan at UW Tacoma on some programs. One of the big things our office does right now is we coordinate the Sustainability Action Plan, which the University of Washington finalized this past summer on July. So that's a plan that covers 10 targets, all have measurable targets that we're looking at kind of over the next 5 years. And each year we come up with a set of actions that drives our efforts towards those targets. So obviously with 10 targets in things ranging from energy to food, waste, academics, our office isn't doing it all, but we're kind of the managers of the project and just sort of making sure that everything is moving forward on that. We work with a number of academic and operational units across campus in planning and implementing projects. Our office falls under UW facilities, so we work really closely with operational units on campus. Again, making sure that we're implementing energy conservation measures, looking at our greenhouse gas emissions, working really closely with our transportation and waste partners. We also have pretty good relationships with a number of academic units on campus, things like the Program on the Environment, the larger College of the Environment, Environmental Innovation Challenge, just a few of them, but also, across the board, we try to connect with as many academic and operational units as we can to highlight all the sustainability work that's happening across our campus. And that includes, we're also working with a number of student groups. And we're always happy to promote the work that various people are doing across the University of Washington. We also support the Student Campus Sustainability Fund, which is a grant fund available for students on the Seattle campus to create sustainability projects on campus. That's where really some of the coolest sustainability features on campus often come from student ideas in the Campus Sustainability Fund. We also are just a general resource for the UW community. So, if someone wants to get involved in some aspect of sustainability across the University of Washington, if they contact our office, we should be able to connect you with the people that are working on whatever you're interested in across the university. And last, well, not last, but one of the other things we do, last on this slide, we run some green certification programs currently on hiatus, but when campus is generally operational, we have green certification programs for labs, offices, as well as student groups. And that's really a way for workplaces around the university, those labs and offices, to kind of showcase what they're already doing for sustainability, or find some resources about different ways they can operate sustainability. And we have a number of resources, and we can connect them with other groups on campus to kind of showcase some of the best practices. And we've also created a certification in conjunction with a number of student groups, just kind of showcasing how student groups and RSOs can really run sustainably as well. To get back to that sustainability action plan, just to dive into a little bit more, again, we have 10 targets guiding the actions, and that really is a institutional plan. So the targets are for all 3 campuses. There's 5 guiding principles in that plan, with those annual actions that we're going to update every year, the actions that we're taking under the plan to reach those targets. And if you're interested in learning more, we've got our website, green.uw.edu/plan. We've got an event coming up on October 22nd where we'll be diving more into the plan, and there's going to be more opportunities for people to really engage with the plan if you're interested in being part of the planning process or working on that, or just providing some feedback and comments on how you think the sustainability plan at the University of Washington, some of the actions that should be taken, or any feedback you have on that. There's opportunities for that as well. Just to kind of showcase, if you haven't been on the Seattle campus, we've got a relatively large campus. There's about 45,000 students. We're right on the edge of Lake Washington. We've got a number of kind of natural forested areas on campus. It's one of the things I really like about when we are able to be on campus, that in addition to the built environment we have with all the buildings, there's a lot of places where you can kind of duck away into what feels like kind of a little natural area in the trees. And so we've, and then we've got the Lake Washington and views of Rainier. So we've got a campus that, even though it's in the middle of Seattle, there's a lot of connections to the natural world, which kind of underline why our sustainability work is so important. And just, if you, again, just kind of one of the images from this past year on campus, we've got the Suzzallo Library, which is really one of the central buildings on campus in the middle of Red Square. They've got lit up in purple. So just wanted to showcase one of the, nice views there on the central Seattle campus. And then, the other piece that I want to make sure that people know is that our website, green.uw.edu, is really a resource. We've got a number of things available to showcase some of the different sustainability efforts happening. A lot of different ways you can dive in, but one of the best ways is we've got our information portal, where we have data on sustainability performance across the university in a number of topics. So, you can see energy, buildings, food, transportation, water, waste. We've got the numbers and the data that you can dig into, and we also, on all those pages, have a number of resources for ways that, maybe you can get involved, or things that you can do in your own life, information on sustainability and how you can kind of dig deeper into those efforts at the university. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'll let Allan and talk a little bit more about UW Tacoma.
Great. So like Daimon said, my name is Allan Cortina. I'm the sustainability coordinator for UW Tacoma. And as you can see here, it's our campus, beautiful campus, similar to UW Bothell in an urban setting. So a little bit of or quite a bit as a commuting campus, but a little more of that later. So our team, so myself and also Ellen Moore, sorry, I just saw the typo of your name, so sorry about that. She's the chair. Well, I mean, if you want to introduce yourself, you go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. You gave me a minute to speak later. I'm going to take it then.
Okay, great. And then Stanley is the facilities director, which is really very forward in the sustainability aspect of energy, water, waste at UW Tacoma. And then also Tessa Coleman also assists him in that spearheading of sustainability on campus. So what we're currently doing is, as for energy, facilities has really done a great job in retrofits and remodeling of existing buildings and current classrooms and offices to make them more energy efficient. Always looking towards the whole life cycle and seeing what is the most sustainable choice out there, and strict non-use of VOCs and carpets and paints. Waste, we currently just a few years ago introduced the big bellies where you can do compost, recycling, and waste and just regular landfill, and putting that in every building and every restroom, so people could utilize that for compost and everything. And then the engagement aspect and educating people and using the right container and so on and so forth, even though it's still kind of a problem at UW Tacoma, it is getting better over time with more education. Water conservation for irrigation use. I have a slide or a graph on the next one. You can see in irrigation use, we implemented a rainbird system where and a weather station at UW Tacoma where it takes in all the factors for weather, humidity, rain, and gauges how much water needs throughout the campus. So we're making it more smarter and more efficient. And you can see when we implement it, a big decrease in water usage for the campus. And then on the right, the energy use intensity. So this is just a metric of the natural gas that we use and also the electricity we use and normalized over square footage. So the gist of it is, even though our student population in the brown line is going up, our electricity usage or energy intensity is actually going down. So finding more efficient appliances, using it smarter, like I said, all goes into lowering that EUI, and hopefully we could be able to lower even further down. And also, as per this event and other events, we and mostly Earth Day, or this past was Earth Week, trying to engage students and using the campus as a living laboratory by working with facilities, working with students to come up with capstone ideas or utilize the campus itself to do some kind of research, whether it's waste or energy usage, any of that sort. Decarbonizing, we're currently switching, facilities is switching from natural gas boilers, because we do have quite a few that for heating, into electric chillers, which are more efficient. But that is a big capital project, so over time, we should see a big decrease in natural gas usage, which will decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. But obviously we do have some current challenges, and my position is relatively new to UW Tacoma. I've been there since February, right before all the shutdowns, so great time to go into it. But for the past few years, we haven't really kept track of data, so like commuting data from students, professional travel, and other sorts of metrics weren't being tracked. So having that lack of data is really difficult to see where we need change, and also behavior change, because obviously that's one of the biggest challenges we have as for people, faculty, staff, students. A lot of these sustainability measures do involve behavior change, which is really hard. And staff and student involvement, going into behavior change, but also our job to engage the students and staff and give them the resources and the education to see what they can do to change their behavior or to choose the better path, a more sustainable path. And and then again, organizing, tracking sustainability related metrics. So going back into the data, academics, learning outcomes, all those are really hard to track. So that's something that we currently are trying to tackle and to get a kind of a baseline for our campus to then implement programs to make our campus more sustainable. So right here, for 2018, I was able to calculate greenhouse gas emissions for UW Tacoma, and you can see here is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. But obviously, the big piece of the pie is scope 3, which encompasses commuting, professional travel, and study abroad. So as you can see, as we're a commuting campus, a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions comes from commuting itself, either staff, faculty, or students. And that's a huge chunk of our greenhouse gases. You know, scope 1 is like our natural gas use and propane use, or whatever other things we have going on campus. So, and then scope 2 is our electricity, I believe. And since most of our electricity comes from hydroelectric, the carbon footprint compared to everything else is quite low. Well, compared to other traditional electricity sources, it is quite low. So that's why we have a low scope 2, but a huge scope 3. So again, that's another tackling of transportation. How do we, since we are a community campus, it is really hard to tackle that. So that is one of the challenges we have to face. So one of the solutions is we're developing, as University of Washington has overall sustainability action plan. We're going to develop a UWT, more narrow or more fitting to our campus, since the campuses are very different. So following the guiding principles of the sustainability action plan that Seattle came out with, we're going to get in contact with faculty, academics, and everything, and try to see what goals we want to pursue for our sustainability plan. And then I'll leave it off to Ellen for the Sustainability Committee.
Okay. Well, Allan said I could have 1 minute, so you cut me off if I go longer.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Yeah, so the UW Sustainability Committee is actually a group of, we're a really active group, really dynamic group. But what I like about our committee, which I'm chairing for the first time this year, I've been on it for about 5 years, is that it brings together lots of students, staff, and of course also faculty like myself. And our group, the committee has actually been growing. And so we are, like the slide indicates, we're very high on student engagement. So we do, I said Husky Swap, it goes by a slightly different name, but basically it's where, of course, folks will bring in, various items of clothing, various things, and it's called the Reuse Fair. And then last year was just really vibrant. There were just lots of people there. And so we do things like that. Our committee in the past has done things like, we had one campaign that we called Plastic Surgery, Changing the Face of the Planet One Bottle at a Time. And it involved social media where students had to find all of the, Alexa, I was listening when you were saying, well, I was listening the whole time, but when you were saying about the refill stations on campus, we have a ton. I don't know about you, and so we had our students try to find them all. It was like a scavenger hunt. And then they would win like small prizes from local sustainable businesses. We did Hug a Mug, where we got our local coffee shops to offer discounts if they would just bring in their own mug and post it on Insta or something like that. We are thinking this year, so we don't know what's possible given, the pandemic. But we have been thinking about the UW Farmers Market, where of course we actually have a farmers market centered on campus. And we don't know about safety and everything else that's going on. We obviously aren't going to have as many students on campus this year. So that may be something that we plan for, say, 2021 or beyond. And the last thing that I see on the slide is the pantry. We coordinate a lot with the pantry and also the Giving Garden. The Giving Garden, you can look it up. They have a really nice website, updated all the time. And the Giving Garden is basically fresh food and produce that is produced by students for students. And just in the last couple of years, we really started to then take a lot of that excess produce and send it over to the pantry. And the pantry is focused on providing free, culturally appropriate, and also hygiene items for our students. And what we're doing, I'll just put a plug in for the pantry, is that what we are doing this year is for the pantry is that we are actually delivering things for students. And so we're delivering a lot of the pantry items and making sure that they get them during this time. And the last thing, I'm just going to follow up because I'm a natural performer with this. So this is something that we're hoping to do, that we can do during a pandemic. Let me explain briefly, which is I would like to do a tri-campus, professors get a pie in the face, sustainability trivia, where students ask questions. If we get them wrong, we get a pie in the face. I'll turn that off here at some point. That's my dog, of course, next to me. And so we were looking for ways to be active as we can during the pandemic. So maybe a Zoom call with a pie in the face is the way to do that. That is all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ella. When you change your background, the dog appeared. I was like, oh, it just appeared out of nowhere. Kind of freaked me out. But moving on. So if you're at UW Tacoma and you want to get involved, I would say, look out for volunteer or participate in events like this one, or contact the sustainability committee. Hopefully Ellen could jot down the email on there, join the listservs, or you can contact me. My email's up there. And me, Stanley, everybody, we're always open to any capstone ideas or any suggestions or any comments from the students, staff, faculty. If they have an idea they want to implement on the campus, or if they have questions, please just contact me and I'll see if it's feasible, if I can contact you with the right people. So yeah, I'll put it down in the chat, but you can contact me for any UWT related sustainability questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. That was great. So now we can open it up to questions. If anyone has a question for one of our presenters, anyone that's watching, feel free to put it in the chat. So I'll give you guys a little while to think about a question. But we do have some other questions as well. So let me pull them up. These were previously submitted. So let's see. I guess this one is for UW Seattle. What are some of the key points students should know from UW's Sustainability Action Plan?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the Sustainability Action Plan has 10 targets, most of which are on a five-year span. So we're looking at, kind of a baseline of last year and how we can improve our sustainability performance going forward. A lot of these are, fairly operational and institutional. So things like, reducing greenhouse gases and waste obviously requires individual actions from everyone on campus, but is kind of driven at the institutional level. But there are some other ones that are a little bit more, I think, directly impactful for students. Especially we've got a couple about academics and research. So those are targets where we're trying to really increase the amount of sustainability research being done on campus and opportunities on campus. There's also one around academics that includes the exploration of creating a new student sustainability hub on the Seattle campus. They're still looking into that, so I'm not sure, they're still determining exactly what that might look like and whether that would be a resource for all three campuses or Seattle specific, but really kind of filling the gap in terms of one of the issues that we've seen a lot around student efforts is we have dozens of student groups around sustainability on campus. Sometimes we've counted as many as 40. There's a number of efforts that are happening that are really student driven, campus sustainability fund grants that are student driven, but there's always the danger when you get a lot of student energy and passion around some specific issue, when the students who are really leading that charge graduate or leave the university, sometimes that passion doesn't always pass on to the next group of students, or there's not anyone to pick that up. And so one of the hopes of having like something like a student sustainability hub would be to kind of be that central resource that, you know, would maybe allow some of those efforts to, you know, move to be a little bit more consistent, to have a central resource for the student groups. Our office currently serves some of that function, but we just know that there's a lot more need out there than we're currently able to really provide, you know, when we're working with operations, academics, and students. So that's a big one. And, you know, if you're interested in doing more around that, the Campus Sustainability Fund coordinator, Kyle, is one of the people that's kind of taking that on. So you could contact the Campus Sustainability Fund or email our office, sustainability@uw.edu, and we can always connect you. And really, you know, for all of the targets, for all of the aspects of the sustainability plan, like I said, I know there's students on campus that are really passionate about things like food, about things like energy conservation or increasing solar power on campus. All those are covered in the plan. So if you're interested in getting more involved or connecting with the people that are working on those targets, again, contact our office, sustainability@uw.edu. We can connect you with the people that are working on those, or we can, you know, take whatever your you know, your feedback and what your comments and pass those along. And so, you know, really we know we need more student voices to help drive the, you know, kind of determining of the future actions on the plan. So we do want more students to connect with us and say they want to get involved. Hopefully we'll have some more opportunities for students to connect in, some more concrete opportunities and ways that they can connect in. But for now, contact our office, sustainability@uw.edu, and we'll try to plug you into the plan in whatever way that we can.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Damon. So our next question is, how does UW orient new plans towards sustainable development rather than just bigger, better, and more?
Maybe I can take this one first. So UW Bothell is actually in the process of building a new STEM building. And so we are co-located with Cascadia, as I said before, and so this is going to be our first really joint built and run building together. And so the way that we have been focused on sustainability instead of just growth is looking at how the impact of the building is going to affect the upland forest, and the sustainability team has been put together from faculty and staff to really look at the impacts and provide feedback and make sure that we are kind of in the planning process from the bottom floor, which we really appreciate, instead of having to go back later and say, oh, well, coulda, shoulda, woulda, for some of the building elements. So I think that's one of the ways, but also just kind of putting a cap on enrollment in some cases. We've seen that, and that's kind of setting ourselves up for success so that we can kind of sustain ourselves to a certain level, and then think through what happens past that.
Yeah, and I was just going to say too, I think that's always one of the challenges of balancing. You know, there's a lot of incentives around the university for more growth, and so sometimes it can be difficult to sort of balance that with the need for sustainability if you don't have you know, kind of if you don't have the leadership that's behind that. I think we've definitely been seeing some of that at the university, where there's a lot more discussions that I've been seeing at the, you know, around how best to make that balance, to make sure that we're, you know, looking at sustainability rather than just purely growing for growth's sake. We have you know, there's been in the last few years adoption of some green building standards at the university, which are, you know, even more stringent than state requirements. Just being in Washington State, and, you know, for us being in Seattle, and I'm fairly certain Bothell and Tacoma are the same, there's already you know, a lot of green building requirements and zoning requirements both at the state and local level, and the university has made a commitment to go beyond those those requirements to require all new buildings to be gold LEED, for example, to go further than, you know, local regulations in terms of energy and water conservation. So that's one way to do it. And I know there's also a lot of you know, talk right now around the, you know, deferred maintenance backlogs and making sure our existing buildings are working as efficiently as possible, and sort of balancing out and seeing if, instead of just, you know, building out bigger and more, to if we can better utilize existing space. So all of those conversations are happening, and those are, you know, somewhat difficult discussions, you know, to balance the needs around all the different parts of the university. But there are some discussions happening around there, and there are some efforts towards that. Allan or Ellen, did you want to chime in with anything around Tacoma on that?
Yeah, so we currently have a building being planned for the Melgard Hall. It's going to be, I believe, a mechanical engineering department going to be there, and also maybe civil. But similar, you know, I'm in constant meetings with architects and builders and we have a specific group just for sustainability attributes for the building. So it's in constant talk, and, you know, obviously, you know, you could spend a lot of money on sustainability, and unfortunately, it is to the point where, you know, best bang for your buck, I guess. So we really have to collaborate, work with the builders, work with the stakeholders to see what, you know, obviously, as for the sustainable group here in UW Tacoma, we're going to keep pushing for those sustainable attributes, but at the end of the day, it is kind of negotiation of what, but like Daimon was saying, you know, there are strict guidelines for green buildings, so there are minimums, but UW Tacoma is trying to do above and beyond those things in water, energy, even engagement of students and participation for education in the building. So all that's in the talk and works for any new buildings.
I was just going to say one other thing that's available at UW Seattle, and a number of the more recent building constructions, there's been a lot of input from students. So for example, the new life sciences building where the biology department is, a couple of different student groups worked with the, you know, the groups on campus that were putting up, as well as the architects, and access campus sustainability fund grants to create some conservation efforts in those buildings that might not have otherwise been a part of them. So students with UW Solar worked to put rooftop solar on that building, as well as some innovative solar fins on the south side of the building. There's a feature that kind of metal, were originally going to be metal fins to shade the building somewhat from the sun, so you didn't have a big greenhouse heating effect. And with UW Solar, students kind of pushed to reimagine that, so it's now shaded glass with a solar photovoltaic cell film in between. So not only does it shade the building, but it also creates some power when the sun hits it, in addition to the rooftop solar. So that was a really innovative project that students drove, as well as in that building as well, the students utilized the Campus Sustainability Fund grant to create a water reclamation system. There's a water filtration system in there for all the labs. There would normally be some wastewater from that filtration system that would just go to the storm drain, and instead they're recapturing that to try to utilize for irrigation water for the greenhouse. I know when the population health building was being designed, there was student charrettes around, you know, some student ideas for the building, how they could sort of create more sustainable features on the building. I know the Campus Sustainability Fund has been working with our facilities team in terms of creating more opportunities for student input as we're looking at other buildings on campus. So I'm hopeful that that kind of builds and grows, and that there's going to be a lot more opportunities for students to really drive some of these decisions going forward as well, when we're thinking about new buildings on campus.
I also wanted to add, and that solar project was so cool. I looked around at it with Daimon, and I just thought that was brilliant. But I think once the building is built, it's not just the process of building it, and yes, that's its whole, it's itself. It's a whole project in and of itself. But past that, There's also opportunities for making the building even more efficient and leaving room for change within that building, so retrofits, and looking for opportunities to conserve even further through the operations of that building. For instance, UW Bothell signed up for the PSE Green Direct program, so we will be getting our entire electricity from renewable energy sources. So opportunities like that, we really actively seek out and try to bring them to our campus as much as possible and be sustainable past the construction of a building.
Awesome. So the next question, it's a really good question. What are some of the challenges of implementing a sustainability plan across 3 separate campuses?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said we didn't struggle with it or even trying to fit into UW Tacoma. So, I mean, it's a great foundation, especially with the guiding principles, like I mentioned in the slide. That's why we're going to take that sustainability action plan, try to implement as much as we can for the campus itself, and then whatever's not applicable to us, we'll have to find different goals or kind of fine tune it. So making some modifications to it. But that does mean collaborating with a lot of different departments and different people, which have time constraints and other things going on. So it is quite difficult just to collaborating, just kind of getting everybody together on the same page and then putting everything down on paper. So that's where we are with the sustainability action plan.
Yeah, I would say also, at least from UW Bothell, we have a sustainability action plan for UW Bothell specifically that was created in 2018. And so it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation where we're kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, where does the plan that was already created fit into the university-wide plan, and how do we make these 2 plans interact? And then, of course, like trying to figure out the things that are applicable to us, like Allan was saying, versus that aren't applicable to us, because we run our campuses very different. And our campuses have very different sets of infrastructure. So in that way, we are really having to take our own course on each of the different plan metrics. So I was just in a meeting right before this about waste, and we were talking about how we are charged by Recology for per tip of the bin. It could be full or empty. We're just charged per tip, and I really have no way of gathering any more data than that. And the U-wide sustainability plan is asking us to reduce by a certain amount or to divert a certain amount of waste, where I don't have metrics to even know what we currently are doing. So then looking at our Bothell sustainability plan and saying, okay, well, here are our waste goals to help divert waste by educating people. And so that kind of fits, but it's not like a perfect puzzle piece fit. So trying to figure out those interactions has been, I think, a little bit difficult, but we're always meeting as a U-wide whole sustainability group and trying to figure out where those interactions come into play and how to address them.
Yeah, I would say that it's always kind of a difficulty when we're trying to do something that's tri-campus, just in terms of Seattle is so much larger and kind of outsized, and in a very different just kind of environment. The actual physical environment of the Seattle campus is a little different from the Bothell and Tacoma campuses in terms of not only size, but just how they're fit in the urban area around them. And so I know that when we were planning, there was always some consideration that some of the targets that were being considered were very Seattle specific or Seattle centric, and maybe didn't take into consideration sort of how that would the needs of the individual campuses at Bothell and Tacoma. And that was a discussion point. I know in the end it maybe still there was some concern over that even at the final targets. So, the way we're trying to get around that is just, as Alexa said, we're trying to coordinate as much as we can, and also the understanding that, for these targets, even though we're trying to meet them as an institution, it's not necessarily that we're dictating that each campus is reaching those targets individually. For example, the reducing waste or the energy targets. We have a top level target, and we hope each campus is working towards those in the ways that we can. But in some cases, Seattle has a lot further to go than Bothell or Tacoma. The Bothell and Tacoma campuses, a lot of the buildings might be newer, might be a little bit more energy efficient, and they have done some of the efficiency work a little before Seattle has gotten to them. So they may have already gotten those efficiency gains that we're looking at. So they don't have as much that they can do towards those targets. So, while we know that there's still things that everyone can do, then, in order to reach the 10% mark, for example, Seattle might have to do a little bit more, an 11 or 12% to reach that, because we just know there's not as much room for Bothell to Tacoma to move forward with that. So, I think that anytime you do something at the university where you're trying to bring together multiple departments or campuses, it can be difficult. It's a very decentralized university in a lot of ways, but we're trying to get past that with as much communication as we can, as much collaboration as we can, and a recognition that those the realities of the campuses are different. And so, I think we all have a shared goal around sustainability. So we want to do what we can, and hopefully the plan provides a framework for that and becomes a way to really make those networks and our relationships stronger, rather than feeling like each campus has to go at this alone.
I'd also add that another challenge is funding, because like Daimon was saying, in many cases the UW Bothell, say, energy is further ahead than Seattle campus because of our infrastructure. And so in order to be more efficient, we would need more money in order to go further. And so I think that's another boundary that we might have in some of these things, especially things like academics, where new programs would need us to invest in our faculty to have time to develop those programs. So whether that be paying for a faculty salary for a quarter to be able to really sit down and focus on these things. I think that's definitely another challenge, is the focus and the funding and capacity building to focus on these items.
Awesome. So our last question is, what has been one of your most successful sustainability efforts on UW Seattle campus? Do you plan to improve or keep it going? What impact has this effort made? So that is a question for Daimon.
Yeah, although I think that one, if you remove the word Seattle out of that, I think that could be open to everyone. So I'd be interested to hear what Allan and Alexa have to say about what's going on their campus. It's hard to single out one sustainability effort. I would say that, as I mentioned before, the Campus Sustainability Fund is really been a driver for a lot of the kind of most envelope pushing projects on the Seattle campus. And that's, again, the grant funds for student-driven projects. And they are at the point where they're awarding around $400,000 a year, I think, towards student projects. And those can be everything from really large-scale infrastructure projects. So, for example, the UW Solar Student Group has gotten a number of grants. I think a couple of them at or around $100,000 to install solar panels on campus in partnership with some of the stakeholders on campus. So they working with housing and food services, or working with the facilities arms to get those panels installed. But it's really creating renewable energy that probably wouldn't have happened, at least at that this soon, and really showcasing that that's something that's doable for the campus, and how you can get a return on investment for solar power. So making it a little bit easier to have conversations about funding solar as part of future buildings, or even retrofitting some of the existing buildings with solar. There's also, and as I said, another campus sustainability fund project around water conservation in the life sciences building. So those are some examples of some really large scale projects that probably wouldn't have happened without student effort and the campus sustainability fund resources. And the campus sustainability fund also provides small scale grants for students. So things like students who want to have an event on campus and, print more posters for, event promotion. Campus Sustainability Fund has done that, or, grants to do, some planting of pollinator plants and some of the natural areas around campus. So, they're doing, a few dozen events or a few dozen projects a year are granted. And as I said, it's kind of everything from these large infrastructure projects to, sort of smaller scale projects. And each of them, is just a way for students to take the ideas that they might have and really push sustainability on our campus. And I think that that's one of my favorite things about working in sustainability around UW is seeing those student ideas and having a way to say, hey, if you really want this to happen, here's some resources for you. And, we can help connect you with the people on campus that you need to talk to. The Campus Sustainability Fund is great about taking those student ideas and really making sure that they're viable and that they've talked to the right people on campus before they create those grants. So it's, not only giving students that opportunity, but really teaching them how those projects can become a reality. So I think that's kind of my favorite sustainability effort on campus, and it's one that really just keeps creating new projects and keeps creating new efforts. So that's where I'd sit. So I'm curious about hearing what Bothell and Tacoma might have.
I'm trying to think of the best one. It's hard to pick a favorite. I think Earth Week over the years has really grown, and I think that's very exciting. Our partnership with Cascadia is very exciting. It's not something that is typical, and it's something that I think our partnership was one of the first collaborative, very deeply rooted efforts. And that's happening more and more now, which I think is great. We don't see boundaries of sustainability between the two institutions. And I think we've been able to do a lot more by partnering instead of focusing our efforts on our separate little silos. We're just combining efforts because we're both teams of one. So I think that's one of my favorite as well. And then we have a project called Load Shedding that is part of our sustainability plan. And we've been doing that since May of 2018 or 2019. And we've saved a ton of energy, a ton of money, and really educated people around kind of the efforts that we're doing and how your consumption changes your rates and changes how things work within the energy infrastructure or billing and things like that. So I think that's very exciting too. And working with our maintenance team to find ways to reduce even further and push the envelope is very exciting as well. And that's maybe just the data nerd in me, but I think that's exciting.
Yeah, for UW Tacoma, I can't really take any compliment on the energy side and the water side and the waste side, because it's all been facilities, mostly with Stanley going into reducing our EUI, our intensity, our energy intensity, and also the water, implementing the Rainbird system and the weather station. And saving those resources do add up to, saving money, but also saving in resources in just not being wasteful and being more efficient as a campus. So that's what I would like to point to. We have a lot of work at UW Tacoma, but I'm very proud of, especially the size of our campus, even though it's smaller than Seattle, but compared to other campuses in the United States, has a lower EUI, energy intensity unit, and also a lower greenhouse gas footprint per student. So those things are really great to see, even before I came into the job earlier this year. So going forward, I can only I'm pretty excited about going forward, like what else we can do, and especially in engagement and education.
So we had a question in the chat about load shedding and describing that a bit more. So I'll expand upon that. So load shedding is essentially trying to reduce our consumption at peak periods of time. So say noon, where most people are potentially in between classes, roaming around, getting lunch, using the elevators a ton. And so that spikes our demand. And so when that happens, PSE sets a new demand based on that spike. And so that's our new demand for the rest of the month. So what we're trying to do is stay below that. So not only we save energy, but we also save money along the way, because then we're not being charged for that demand. So what we do in order to make that happen is reduce or raise the temperature, depending on if we're heating or cooling the building, by 1 degree, which is a completely negligible and like not noticeable amount at all. And we only do that in common spaces like hallways and, you know, large areas, stairwells, things like that, to try to keep that down. And that's just for an hour. We turn it down, then it goes right back up automatically. And that's another thing about our building automation system that's great, that maybe Seattle and Tacoma might not have that capability in the same way. All of our buildings are on a building automation system. So with the click of a button and with the settings set to a proper way, we can just make those switches very quickly, and it's just automated. And we don't have to go through a lot of work. It maybe took a little bit of work to set that all up, but we don't have to manually do that every day. And so that's really saved us a lot. And we are constantly looking for ways to reduce even further, looking at, okay, how are our light how are the way that we're lighting the building, how is that affecting our demand during these peak times? Are there any lights that we could shut off because we have these giant floor to ceiling windows that are lighting the stairways or the common spaces? So can we turn off 1 or 2 of the 8 lights to try to reduce as well? And then another thing that I thought of while Allan was talking that I'm very proud of and passionate about, and maybe it's the interdisciplinary arts and science student in me, but I have really focused on shifting the paradigm that sustainability is inherently environmental. And I work with all types of students. I've currently got 2 health studies students. I've had up to 10 interactive media design students. I've worked with teaching students. I've worked with all kinds of different students. And I think that's really important, because it's very crucial for everybody to know that sustainability touches their lives in some way. And it's not necessarily for the tree huggers or the granola people or that kind of thing. It's really important to focus on that.
Awesome. That was a great way to wrap it up, Alexa. Wow. Good job. Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers, Alexa, Ellen, Allan, and Daimon. Yay. Really appreciate it. And I also want to thank everybody who participated in this event.